Hello, everybody. You know, my mind used to be so pathetic, so weak. It was incredible the amount of suffering that I went through with this enfeebled mind that had no power, no individualism, no ability to rise up to life's challenges, constantly seeking for others to pick me up and guide me along, and I had no wherewithal whatsoever. I was in deep and profoundly painful, learned helplessness. I had no mental strength, and that's because I had no mental strength strategies. So we're going to talk about mental strength strategies today. Luis is here. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going, where your mental strength is at. Today we're going to have a mental strength test that will help you figure out where you are, give yourself a score, and then you'll be able to have strategies to improve and have a little bit of insight based on the score. But one of the things that I am so grateful for is that I learned about strategies and was able to translate them into resilience, into self-guidance. And one of the things that we all have to be grateful for are teachers who just say it like it is, but say it in a way that we actually get, that we understand, that we can put into action. And the responsibility is always on the student to meet the teacher halfway and to endlessly seek the teaching and to seek the source of the teaching, so to speak, through a variety of teachers. So it's never just one. One is the most dangerous number when we're trying to learn something, but we need to continue to not only seek the teaching from individual teachers, but see what's behind it all and think about it at a meta level, which is what strategy is all about. So this is what we need to get covered, and we're going to talk about today. Just as a note before that we get started, I am doing a TEDx talk at TedxDocklands on February 20th, 2020. If you'd like to join us, the link for that is down below, and would love to see you. This is in Melbourne, so if you are there or can be there, please get signed up and join us. That would be fantastic, and say hello if you're there. Would appreciate seeing you very, very much. All right. So when it comes to mental toughness, mental strength, the mental strategies that we need in order to make it happen, we're going to talk about a couple of things on today's presentation, and I want to set the framework by first talking about what exactly does it mean to have mental strength. And then we're going to have a detailed mental strength test where you can assess yourself, and then we're going to have some tools, some exercises, and I got a whole pile of books and things that you can explore for growing your mental strength. And this is going to be a great session. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Maricela is here in Texas and Mexico at the same time. Is that right, Maricela? Great to have you here. And speaking of Maricela, thank you so much for these wonderful bookmarks that you sent. I really appreciate it. This one in particular has some see-through properties, but that was wonderful. Always appreciate it. This one I really like. It says, "Wherever you go, go with all your heart," from Confucius. That was wonderful from Maricela. Thank you so much. And I got all kinds of things here, so thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. It helps keep the evil Dr. Forget at bay when your wonderful things from around the world arrive in my mailbox. So I really appreciate that. And wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you're all really, really excited for a wonderful start to 2020, as am I. All right, so let's get started. What does it mean to have mental strength? This is what we need to get started with. Good to see you, David. Thanks for saying hello. Wonderful, wonderful. Merry Christmas to you as well, and Happy New Year. Always good to see your name. Thank you for being here and saying hello. What does it mean to have mental strength? If you have a definition, please feel free to share it in the discussion box, or if you're watching the replay, put it in the discussion area after that. But basically what it means is it's to have a strategy, right? If you don't have strategies, how are you going to have any strength? So what we want to talk about today are strategies for being what I call smarter, serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality. because that's the number one thing that mental strength is. It is not just acknowledging reality, not just thinking about reality. It is embracing reality and embracing it with all that you've got. That's why I love what Maricela sent here. Wherever you go, go with all your heart. Wherever you go, go with all your heart. This is very, very important. Because if you're going to be serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality, which is what a smarter student is, embrace is what matters. This is what it takes to absolutely embrace it. And we'll talk more about this embracing theory, this philosophy, but I like to think a lot about Nietzsche and his say yes to life, right? And then what is life? Well, life is that thing that just seems to keep repeating itself day after day after day after day. And you have to continually wake up and say yes to this, because to say no is so damn painful. It's so much more painful than saying yes to life, right? And embracing it, making hay while the sun shines, because now's the time, right? And it's very, very important. So smarter students are serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality. And you almost can't be serious and mature if you aren't ready to embrace reality. So we're going to talk about how to get ready to embrace reality if you aren't already. And that's why we have the mental strength test that we're going to take. And I hope all of you will be active in the chat, putting in your answers, because it's going to be very, very useful for you to think these things through. And if you don't take action, then you're just not ready to embrace reality yet, because reality requires that you take action. That's what mental strength is all about. It's building your strategies through taking action, as opposed to just humming and hoping and hawing and thinking that the strategies are going to happen without taking action. And when I was in the learned helplessness, I just wanted it done for me. But that's just not how it works. Now, in entrepreneurialism, there are some places where you can get things done for you. But when we're learning, we really have to do it ourselves. And we have to embrace the reality that all good teaching is teaching by abandonment. We'll talk more about that as we go along. But let me check in with the chat. Luis is here and says, for me, mental strength is to be able to do the things that you have to do. Excellent, excellent. That's part of it, right? To be enabled to execute, right? To execute without whining, without slobbering over yourself with poor me sing-alongs. You know, it's just to execute. Fire, fire, fire. Make it happen, right? That's good. I love that, Luis. Thank you for that. John DC is here from Melbourne, Australia. John, I don't know if you were with us when I announced the TED Talk I'm giving in Melbourne on the 20th of February, but I hope you can join us there. That would be wonderful, wonderful if you can be there. And I will show that on the screen again very soon. And good to have you here. Thank you. Thank you for saying hello, David. Merry Christmas. Toronto in the house. And you love that definition. Great. I love it too. I love Toronto. I have many, many memory palaces there. And I think of Toronto often. What a great place. What a great place. Merry Christmas to you there and to all Torontonians. Wonderful, wonderful. And Austin is here. Godula in Montana at the moment, trying to figure out how to cultivate deep work. Great, Austin. Well, how are you defining deep work? Please let us know what that means so that we can think it through together. Dekwa is in the house. Good to see you, Dekwa. It's been forever and a day. Wonderful, wonderful. That's great to see you here. And thank you for saying hello. I still have this wonderful postcard for you, right in sight, or from you, right in sight. Thank you for that. Always appreciate getting wonderful things in the mail from you all, because that helps keep the evil doctor forget at bay. Melts his cold heart. All right, let's see here. David says, started reading Moonwalking with Einstein. What a great book. And started using a metronome to pace my Memory Palace walkthroughs. So powerful. That metronome is indeed powerful. Privyet, Reclaiming Life. Good to see you here. Thank you for that. Wonderful, wonderful. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going, and where you are with mental strength. And do you have strategies already? Luis says that he has a definition, which is to be able to do the things that you have to do. I like that. And I would say it's also to do the things that you don't have to do, because that's part of it. And we're going to be talking about that in a moment. So what else does it mean to have mental strength? Well, It means to have detachment and inner peace. It really does. And one of the strategies that you want to build is, how can you be detached? How can you be detached from the outcomes so that you can just simply sit back and study what's happened? Just analyze it without getting roped into it, yoked into it, and having any sort of need. Neediness is the opposite of mental strength. But to be detached from the need for a particular outcome, that is pure, true mental strength. And then be peaceful about it, so that if things don't work out the way that you want it, instead of the slobbering, oh, poor me song, you have the stillness, the calm, the focus, the sameness, the absolute, so to speak, zeroness inside, because it's just, well, that's interesting. Whether good, bad, right or wrong, up, down, left, right, that's very interesting. And just be peaceful about it, because all of the things that are happening appear in awareness, but they are not you. You are the thing that sees what is happening, unless you get emotionally tied up in it. And so you need strategies to prevent yourself from being emotionally tied up in things, because that's the ocean, and you need to be the boat that navigates the ocean. You need to be the captain that navigates the boat, and you need to have a little bit of that ocean in yourself so that you don't have to be seasick every day, right? Because if you don't become the ocean, as Leonard Cohen said, you will be seasick every day. So we want to become detached from what we are and see where we are actually is in the field of our perception and our awareness, because we are the inner peace. We really are that peace in which all things are happening. We'll talk more about some resources about how you can get that figured out as you develop your mental strength strategies. All right, Ronald is here. He asks how not to be baited with gaslighting. We will talk about that, and essentially, really, you want to think about context, right? The first thing I would think about is, how are you even in a context of being baited with gaslighting? You know, why are you even there? How does that come about? And if you start to pick that apart, then you may be able to escape the arena altogether, so that you don't have to even be exposed to the bait in the first place. And how could the hook ever hook you if you're not in the arena? And that comes down to having strategies for managed emotions, right? And I put it in the past tense on purpose, because you want to have a strategy to get emotions managed as quickly as possible. You want them in the past, behind you, as soon as they come up. So you need strategies. So to have mental strength is to have a strategy for all of these things. And you also ultimately want a strategy for feeling the fear and doing it anyway, right? So if in the case of Ronald's question about how not to be baited, you might think, well, I'm quite fearful of not having Twitter anymore, or not having Facebook anymore, or wherever the arenas where the baits and the hooks are to get you gaslighted in the first place. You know, you might wonder, how will I be able to survive without talking to my family, without being connected to world news or whatever it is? Look at that emotion that comes up and then get rid of it anyway. See what happens. So many people find through digital fasting that they have so much tremendous detachment that comes up, and peace, and that peace that lasts. So we need a strategy for that in many, many ways. And we also need a strategy to push forward into discomfort, and we need to push forward into challenge. But we need to do it in a way that's not reckless. We can't just go willy-nilly into things, because we will be wrecked if we're reckless. We've got to do it based on real science and discernment. So we'll be talking about what real science means, but it's basically pretty simple. The science of living is quite simple. It means to have the mental strength to get rid of self-delusion, so that it's not the way you'd like it to be, but it actually is what it is without self-delusion, and to filter that out so that the actual data is good and true and solid, but you also know when to change the lens, and you have multiple lenses by which you look at the data that you're producing. so that you're able to see it and be a bit of a perspectivist, have multiple perspectives, step this way, step that way, and be able to really, really use the data in a multifaceted way so that it's giving you the highest possible amount of knowledge. So we'll talk about that, strategies for that today. And Austin Study says that he has a definition here for us, that mental strength is a state of uninterrupted focus that you can use to get the best quality from the effort you put into a task. Excellent. Thank you for that. I think that that's exactly right. It's certainly part of that. And when we do our mental strength test, we're going to talk a little bit about how to figure out what focus is, what that lack of interruption is, because sometimes you want to plan interruption, right? That's part of a strategy. Make sure that not only do you have times to take breaks, but also you have a plan for what to do if you are interrupted, which will happen. That's just life, right? Now, before we carry forward, let's look at some other terms for mental strength, because it's a bit loosey-goosey in its way, and we want to nail down a little bit more of what we mean here. So we might mean resilience, and resilience is one of the terms that a lot of people use all the time. And this is very interesting, because if you look into psychology studies and so forth, then you'll find that resilience actually comes from engineering. And they take it from engineering because it means the ability to spring back into shape. So let's say you have a baseline level of performance and you get interrupted from your focus in the way that Austin Studies mentions. How quickly can you spring back into focus, right? What is the shape of that focus in the first place? And can you analyze and see the way it gets bent, or the way it gets dented, or the way that it gets subverted, how the pipes are rerouted? Do you have tools of analysis that you can go, oh, this is a food interruption. Oh, this is a noise interruption. Oh, this is a, shiny new object syndrome interruption. Or, oh, this is a gaslighting interruption. Do you have that meta-level awareness of the kinds of things that warp your focus? And do you even have descriptive tools of what focus really is? So, for example, my own assessment of focus for me is what I often think of as USSR, uninterrupted, silent, sustained reading. So it's very simple for me to think about what might be bending that focus out of shape. Is it interrupted? Well, then it's not USSR. Is it silent? Well, if not, then it's not USSR. Is it sustained? If not, well, then it's not USSR. Is it reading? Well, if not, then it's not USSR. So resilience means the ability to spring back into the shape of USSR so that I am having actual uninterrupted, silent, sustained reading, right? So you want to think, when you think about mental strength and resilience, the resilience aspect of it, you want to think, do you have a definition of this stuff? Have you thought deeply about it, right? So what is reading a book for you, right? Are you doing speed reading? If you're doing speed reading, are you actually doing speed reading, or are you doing some botched fantasy of speed reading, right? Are you using memory techniques? If so, are you really using memory techniques? Or is it some corrupt, oh, I just surfed all over the internet kind of memory techniques? Or did you actually take a course? Did you actually read a book from beginning to end, right? And then what is the shape of that? Do you know the process from beginning to end? Because you have no mental strength around it. You'll have no resilience around it if you don't know the shape of what it's supposed to be. Because if it gets bent out of shape, you won't be able to spring it back into shape. So it's basic engineering. This is another term for mental strength that's very, very useful. Then you want to have the idea that it's mental stamina. So what does mental stamina mean? Well, stamina is a time thing. It's a duration notion, but it's also a qualitative notion. So it's not just that your focus, for example, lasts for a period of time, but that it maintains a certain level, a certain shape for a period of time. And it's essentially grit, right? So whatever grit means, you might want to think about that, but it is this kind of toughness. It's sticking to it, right? Over time, but not just over time, but with a certain maintenance of a level. And that might mean that you have to shorten the duration, not lengthen it, but actually shorten it. And you have to be able to accept and feel the fear and do it anyway, that now you're not going to try to work for an hour uninterrupted, but you're going to try for just 15-minute blocks. That might be the case for you. Or it might be that you have to stop doing certain things in 15-minute blocks and extend it to 20 minutes, to 30 minutes, to an hour, whatever that case may be, right? So you want to have that toughness, but in order to have stamina, it's a equal amount that is consistent for a particular duration of time. But that time doesn't have to be for eternity. It can be shorter or longer depending on the goal, right? So keep that in mind. The other thing is that you want to think about discernment and decisiveness. So we talked before about decisiveness and this wonderful book, Decisive, which will come up again, and the tool of WRAP, W-R-A-P, which basically means widen your options, reality test, and attain distance, and then prepare to fail. So do you have those kinds of tools? I would just boil WRAP down to discernment and decisiveness so that you can make decisions. Let's check in with our chat. Ronald asks, and before we get to that, if you're just joining us and you haven't heard yet, there is a TEDx taking place in Melbourne on February 20th. If you can join us, please do. The link is in the description at TedxDocklands, and I would love to see you there. So the tickets are probably going to go very, very quickly. Say hello. Let me know if you're going to be there. I'll probably be doing something special for the Magnetic Mary Method family in the Melbourne area while I'm down there, and I'll need you to be in touch, and I'll be in touch with you, of course, because that's going to be important, so we can connect if you want to connect while I'm there. And hopefully you'll be at the TEDx talk and say hello. So Ronald asks, is there such a thing as a memory palace that keeps you grounded, yet keeps reality always novel? Great question, Ronald. Yes, there is, actually. And we've talked about it on a previous live stream, and I have a link and a reference to it coming up in today's presentation. Now, I don't know exactly what you mean about reality being kept novel, because that almost is a definition of reality, right? Reality is always becoming new. So please let me know what you mean by novel, reality being always novel, because that sounds to me just like what reality is already. So please say more. Can mental toughness be taught? This is a major question that people have, and the answer is, of course, yes and no. So let's look at this a little bit deeper, because ultimately what you need to do is you need to play the long game, and you need to teach yourself, right? So we've talked a lot, many, many times about the Feynman technique and developing self-resilience through a particular strategy on how to learn using the Feynman technique. So if you're not familiar with that, just search up the Feynman technique, and you can search Magnetic Mary Method and Feynman technique if you want to see my take on it. I've made it a bit more robust, and I hope you'll just generally look into it across the board, because it's very, very powerful. And what you want to do is learn to teach yourself. Learn to teach yourself. I'm going to give you a whole host of resources at the end of today's presentation that can help you with learning how to teach yourself. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is seek teachers who teach by abandonment, which means that they enable you to escape learned helplessness, and they almost force you to, because they have either limited availability that makes you have to deal with it on your own and learn on your own, or they have the skill of asking you questions that cause self-reflection so that you develop self-reflection skills, self-analysis that leads to meta skills, because you will always be abandoned by the world. You'll always be abandoned by others, because you are not the others, and the others are not you, right? You need to finally, to be fully self-realized, rely on the self that you are. And so the sooner the better. And people who teach by abandonment, says Gary Weber, and I agree with him, and he says it in this book, Happiness Beyond Thought, which if you haven't read it, do yourself the favor and read this by the end of 2019, if not the beginning of 2020. You want to look for teachers who teach by abandonment, because it's really the ultimate way. And it's the way that all teachers are forced to teach anyway, if they're any good, because otherwise they're locking you in learned helplessness, which is where cults come in, which is where these hideous, programs come in that just, they're trying to create what's called pain of disconnect and make it very, very difficult for you to fly on your own. Whereas what you really need to do is you need to be able to start to flap those wings and fly on your own so that you can teach others and teach them in an ethical way so that they themselves become teachers as soon as possible. So I always like James Swartz, who talks about how his teaching is, let's get you in the door and back out again as soon as possible because you've got it, you've learned it, you're ready to go, right? That's the best possible kind of teaching. So mental toughness and mental strength can certainly be taught, but you need to get it from people who have their ethics in order and are not trying to create pain of disconnect with you. So how all that's going to work is that you got to test. You have to have a testing mentality, and you got to be a scientist in the laboratory of life. Now, you might not like those metaphors, and that's okay. People don't like all metaphors. I personally like those metaphors because they're basically coherent and they are congruent with what actually works. It's the least metaphoric, right? It's got a limited polysemy, as we sometimes say in philosophy. And the more limited the polysemy, which means it has a limited ability to mean a million things. It really just means only the certain things. It's as limited to one meaning as possible. And you should seek those out. Seek out metaphors. Nietzsche told us we will always need metaphors. It's just the way that the brain works. But you can actively engage in the metaphors. You can choose the metaphors that work best for you at a conscious level. And so I would highly, highly recommend that you understand what polysemy is. It is something that is very dangerous, that yokes your mind and keeps it busy, takes it on a wild goose chase. And if you can limit polysemy in the metaphors that you will always be forced to choose and work with, then you'll be much better off. So I always like the scientist and the laboratory metaphor because this is what we have to do. We have to gather evidence that confirms or denies propositions, hypotheses, and we have to test them in our own experience to validate or invalidate them. And the more actively engaged we are as scientists, as if the world was a laboratory, the more we get real feedback that we actually can confirm or deny, as long as we're radically honest about it, that aids our progress. So I like this metaphor. If you don't, then that's okay. Please find different metaphors, but understand that we are in a referential world. We use language. Language is multi-referential, and we're always going to be caught in some sort of level of reference. So try to find references that limit polysemy, limit possible meaning, so that you just have the most direct line to what it is that you're actually doing, knowing that we have a bit of a trap inside of these riddles. All right, so let's check in with our chat, and let's see here. JV is here from the Philippines. Hello over there in the Philippines. Good to see you. Trey Verda is here. Jignesh is here. And Lavano is here. Let's see. Ronald says, only the novel is nourishing. This is from Gestalt philosophy or psychology. Okay, that doesn't give me an idea. That doesn't give me a definition of the novel, though. So if you can talk about what the novel means, that would be great, Ronald. But like a lot of Gestalt psychology, that just sounds like meaningless babble. Only the novel is nourishing. How can that be true when we know for a fact that that we have such things as nostalgia and we are deeply nourished by nostalgia? So I would just recommend that you avoid pop la-di-da terminology that ultimately falls apart within a second of scrutiny. What does it even mean to be nourished, right? What does this nourishing mean? We just talked about how dangerous polysemy is. Well, nourishing can mean 1,000,005 things, right? So we want to get to the basics of what we actually mean with a limited set of metaphors and just be direct as possible. So something like only the novel is nourishing completely falls apart within a second of scrutiny because it can't possibly be true. Look at the world right now. We are stuck in all kinds of nourishing novelty and nostalgia, right? I personally can tell you right now, I find Stranger Things and its nostalgia very nourishing. And then I can go very specifically into what I mean by how it nourishes me. And one of the nourishing things that it does is it reminds me of all the cool stuff that I loved when I was a kid, right? And then that gives me memory exercises. And then I use those memory exercises in a particular way. So it's very, very nourishing because it has a practical outcome. So is there anything particularly novel about Stranger Things? Well, yes, there is one thing that's novel about it, and that is that it's never existed before. But other than that, it's just a giant pile of rehashed, wonderful things with actors who are new. Their faces are novel. Are their faces particularly nourishing? Well, we could think about that. We could think it through. But really, what's novel about it is that it is not original at all. And that's what's so wonderful about it. And that's a huge explanation for its success. So I would just encourage you again to define the novel. I think you will find that there is no such thing as the novel, except for, in particular, contexts such as places that you've never been. So we know, for example, in memory science, that if you go to a new location, your brain will produce more of a chemical called norepinephrine. And one of the reasons that it's doing that is simply because that's what it does in situations of true novelty, places you've never been before, which aids in spatial memory, which means that you can have a bit of an advantage using those new novel places as memory palaces because there'll be more norepinephrine involved in their formation. So that's a place where the novel might make sense. But your original question was, always novel. Well, you can't always be traveling, so that's impractical and it's not necessary. But in terms of one's daily life and how that I enforce novelty on purpose is I constantly look for new cafes that I haven't been to. It seems like a minor thing, but it's actually a major thing from a memory and brain health perspective because of the enhanced and greater amounts of norepinephrine that are produced when you're in novel situations. Likewise with, going to give talks and stuff like that. Each one is a novel situation. But I don't think that it's necessarily nourishing in a Gestalt sense. So let's dig deeper into what we mean there. Trey Verde says, do you have tips on helping memory palaces to be more vivid? Yes, indeed. Thank you for asking about that. And the first tip would be to make sure that you know the fundamentals. You know the fundamentals of all 8 magnetic modes, and you practice them regularly, thoroughly, and in the context of the full meal deal. So you have at least one complete memory palace network that has been run through all 8 magnetic modes, and that you are continually mapping out new memory palaces, multiple networks, and always running them through the magnetic modes. That's very, very important. So that's one major tip. And then you have gone through, for example, visualization mastery, which is a course in the masterclass that will help make sure that all your magnetic imagery is very, very vivid as well. And one of the things you want to do in there is make sure that you're actually writing it out by hand. So people ask me all the time, can you do this without drawing your memory palaces? Can you do this without writing out the lists and all that sort of stuff? And the answer is, yeah, you can, but it's not going to be nearly as vivid if you try and skip the steps. So be the scientist in the laboratory of your own life, and this will help you a great deal in terms of getting more vividness out of your memory palaces. All right, Lavano says, why is the focus of your method of memorization, and many I've encountered, more on creating palaces instead of learning, firstly, how to visualize properly internal images? Thanks for that question, Lavano. Here's the answer. That's because memory palaces are not primarily visual. They're spatial, and they're all kinds of other things. They're figural. They are autobiographical memory. They are episodic memory. And so you do not need to visualize properly internal images because proper images are never fully visual on their own. And that's the big trap. It's the trap that so many people fall into. So if you want to have truly robust memory palaces and truly robust magnetic imagery, you're going to do what I just said based on what I just said to Trey Verde here. And you're going to make sure that you're using all of the magnetic modes. And you're not going to worry about proper. You're going to worry about, does it get me the outcome? And you're going to be a scientist. You're going to test. So instead of getting emotionally involved, you're going to have mental strength. And that mental strength is going to help you be able to say, oh, something went wrong there. What was it? Oh, I didn't use enough of old Dr. Metivier's A mode, or I didn't use enough of the E mode. And then you're going to just go in and you're going to bolt it in and you're going to test again and you're going to go, wow, I got it now. Amazing. It works. Or as you're on your way to pat yourself on the back, which everybody should do when they succeed, and it's a very good thing to do to pat yourself on the back when you succeed. But as you're on the way, you're going to stop yourself and you're going to say, what worked there? Oh, it was the O mode. I should use that O mode way more. Yeah, that's a good idea. Very, very important, right? Because if you don't stop and analyze all of this, then you're never going to discover just how powerful all these modes are. And so, the last thing I'll say, Lavano, and this is very important to get and to understand, your memory palaces are images. They are mental imagery. But to be fully robust, they must satisfy at least all of the 8 modes. And there may be more modes coming, but those are the major 8 that I've discovered. All right, carrying on. Thank you for those questions, by the way. Please keep them coming. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and Tre Verde. You're very welcome. All right, so the mental toughness question of can mental toughness be taught? Can it be caught? It can be caught, for sure. But you want to memorize relevant information, and you want to memorize it for extended reflection. So it's not so much about teaching or being taught. It's about you also reflecting on what you've been taught. So mental strength and a major strategy comes from actually setting time aside to reflect. So many people fail to do this. They don't have a time set aside to reflect. They don't journal or any of these things. You need to set time for reflection, and you need to reflect upon things that you've memorized. Because if you're all just doing it from inside your head and looking at books, and you're not externalizing it, mind mapping, taking notes, journaling, etc., you're not really extending your ability to have extended reflection. So you can teach yourself mental strength, mental toughness, but you've got to be engaged in it, and you've got to work from relevant information. Dav Lavi is here from Montreal. Good to see you. It's been a while. Thank you for saying hello. And if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and how things are going for you. Now, you got to combine all of this with action. So you can reflect until you're blue in the face, which some people do, but they never take action. Well, that's no way to succeed. You've got to actually dive in. And you've got to dive in when you don't want to. You got to feel the fear and do it anyway, right? You got to let go of the outcome, because mental strength and mental toughness come from a willingness to let go of outcomes, right? Because if you're trying to know the results in advance, if you're trying to be some sort of person who sees the future, you're going to chase the results away. But if you embrace it, as we talked about earlier, being a smarter student, which is serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality, well, reality requires that you take action. So you're not ready to embrace reality if you're not taking action. And you need to have a plan to take action. And that's where your journaling and extended reflection and mind mapping can help make sure that you actually have a plan for taking action, and you do it consistently. And you test this. You test it relentlessly. So you set a plan. You set a plan. And you got to think to yourself, do I have a plan? So who here is ready for the mental strength test? I've got a very powerful mental strength test ready for you that will help you analyze yourself. And it's got a series of questions. And I would like to know in the chat if you're ready for it, so that we can unlock our best mental energy and our physical energy and proceed through it. Otherwise, you'll get limited results, and we'll see here the 80-20 rule in effect by how many people say that they're ready for this. But if you want best results, I mean, it's no problem if you don't. And if you're driving, don't participate, please, heaven forbid. But if you want the best results, you're going to want to open up the floodgates of action and test this relentlessly by answering each and every question on the mental strength test that I've prepared for you. And if you're watching the replay, make sure that you pump in your answers in the discussion area below if you want the best results out of this. It's very, very important. Because if you don't take action, you're never going to get anywhere. I know this from experience because I told you at the beginning I was once a feebling in my mind. And what made the difference was that I started to take the steps. I started to implement and take action and test relentlessly. Made it my goal. And I look back, it's the end of the year, we're all reflecting, I look back and I think, how, in the last 10 years, how much has been accomplished? And how stubborn and bockish, they would say in German, how unbelievably silly I was for thinking I was better than following the steps. I don't have to do that. If that's you, give your head a shake if you can. I know how hard it is because I've been there before. But if you just follow the steps, put your ego out of the way, and actually complete simple exercises, you'll be amazed by what's going to happen for you the next 10 years. But you've got to take the action, and you've got to test it relentlessly. So Jimmy is here. Hello, Jimmy. And David says, cool. Yes, bring it. Dekwa gives a smile. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ronald says, I found your channel looking for a memory palace for music theory, mapping out chord cluster progressions. I was successful making my first palace from tips from your channel. Thanks. You're very welcome, Ronald. And music is a very fascinating way to discover and explore memory techniques. And I hope you'll find that there's much, much more beyond that. And of course, once you have the foundations, you can use music that you've memorized to memorize other things. It's very powerful. And I've been talking a lot lately with a friend who's visiting me now about how that so many people never discover the power because they never build the foundations big enough to run the tests relentlessly that unlock its full power. All right, so we're going to get started here with the mental strength test. I hope you all noticed the 80-20 rule in effect. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. See, science. the rule just governs everything, everything. All right, Ronald's also in Montreal. Excellent. What a wonderful place. What a wonderful place. All right, so the mental strength test, question 1. Type in the chat, yes or no. Do you have a strategy for the next 3 to 5 years? If you do not have a strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, you probably do not have the mental strength that will get you where you need to go. You probably don't have anything that even qualifies as mental strength, because without some sort of idea of where you're going and the plans, the steps that you're going to take in order to get there, then how can you have mental strength, right? You don't have anything to refer back to. So if you were to lose a job, for example, or lose a revenue stream or something like that, do you have a strategy that helps you pivot to compensate for that, so that instead of your mind going into panic mode, into chaos, you instantly have at least something to look at, something to rest upon, some way to pivot, because you've thought it through. This isn't exactly plan B-ism, but it is strategy that already encompasses counter situations that are not in favor of your goals. So Dekwa says, yes, excellent, excellent. Jamiron says, not even 2020, sadly. Well, one of the things we'll talk about today is how to have a strategy that works. But everything starts with just being honest. Being honest is really, really, really important, because now, if you are one of those who are participating, which means you're getting better results than those who aren't, then you now have a path for change. So David says, no, thank you for that. You need to have a strategy, because mental strength requires strategy, right? So we're going to talk about how that you can do this once we get through our test. But thank you, everybody, for participating. And those who didn't participate, think twice about how serious you are. If you are a smarter student, which means serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality, one of the realities that we know almost without doubt is that if you're not participating, if you're not taking action, if you're not engaged in the conversation with yourself and with others matters, you are locking yourself out of the results that you want. And if you don't want the results, no problem. No problem at all. But if you really want change and transformation and more mental strength, then it starts with getting involved right now. right now without delay. So I honor and commend all of you who are busy and answering. And now you have the basis for making a difference, making a change, because you've already taken a micro step. That little micro action is really, really important, because so many people, they make these big plans for change, and the first thing they have to do is so monumental that it's very, very difficult. All we have to do is answer some questions to get started, to get the ball rolling, and I commend you for doing that, because it's just a small little micro decision that says you're in, and you're going to do so much better as a result. All right, so I will catch up with JV's post here in a second, but the next mental strength test question is, can you relax during moments of tension? Yes or no? Let me know in the chat. Are you able to relax during moments of tension? Now, a lot of you will have heard my stories of relaxing during tension. Let's revisit some of them. So when I did my field exams for my PhD and my dissertation defense, they were extreme moments of tension. Those were pass or fail moments. Those were spending years of my life to get to those tests. And if I don't pass them, then all of it would have been blown away. And fortunately, I have a strategy, and I had strategies back then for relaxing during moments of tension. And I'll never forget Victor Vatenza coming out. This would have been 2009, April 3rd, I believe, was the day that I passed my dissertation defense, saying to me, the only guy cooler than you is Miles Davis, right? That's how relaxed I was, even though they were bringing the band hammer down hard. Like, they were asking questions I easily could have tricked myself out that they were trying to fail me. And one person did want me to fail. My dissertation supervisor said that they were in there for 2.5 hours, basically because of one person constantly trying to put the kibosh on the whole thing. Well, I was relaxed not only during it, but I had to sit there and wait in the hallway all this time. And, you know, I needed to be relaxed because the monkey mind is like, oh, etc. So you got to have strategies for these. And, you know, having learned Systema, for example, in physical conflict, some guy tried to mug me in Manhattan. Well, it was actually Harlem, but close enough. And wow, I was able to just relax, even though this guy I don't know that he had a gun for sure, but he was pointing something at me through his pocket. And he's, you know, it's just like something out of a movie. Give me all your money. And all I did was just relax, like the training teaches you to do. It just was because of the strategy. I fell into relaxation. I remember smiling at him. And he said, wipe that smile off your face. He swore, but I'm not going to swear now. But he said, wipe that smile off your face or I will shoot you. And I just kept smiling. And I was so relaxed. But it's because I have a strategy. Now, at the right moment, when my instincts told me it was the right moment, who knows? It could have been the wrong moment. I could have got myself shot. But it all worked out just fine, just the way the teaching promises. I just stepped this way, stepped that way, and then I ran into the nearest store. And I remember his eyes tracking me as I went past him. And it was the most incredible thing because it was having a strategy to relax during moments of tension. And every day we have moments of tension. There are people that I see in my neighborhood who are very confronting. They'll, you know, come up and ask you for change or whatever. And if they don't like your answer, they will give you a hard time. Well, mental strength comes from having a strategy to instantly relax and stay out of it. So, you know, we had the question from Ronald before. I believe it was Ronald who was asking. Check my, whatever, I think my memory is good enough to remember that, about gaslighting and being baited. And so, you know, you don't have to be just baited on the internet. You can be baited in everyday life just by people in the world. So what you want to do is you want to have a strategy to relax. That's what mental strength is about. Relax, 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 relax. You need to relax. You need to relax. All right, I'll check in with the chat, and then we got some more questions. So Physico is in the house. Good to see you, Physico. You say you do have a strategy, but not as global as I would like. Excellent. Hope that you will work on that. Jamiron says, really appreciate your effort and insights, Master Metivier. Well, thank you for that, Jamiron. Right back at you. All right, let's see here. Everybody's coming in. Ronald says no to this. Dequa says it's actually been fun to work on this and get better and better. Excellent. That's how you get better and better, right? You show up and you work on it. Jamiron says depends on intensity. The higher the tension, the less in control and relaxed I get. JV Angelis says 1 and 2 yes, but don't know anything. Or 2 yes, 1 doesn't know anything about strategy, so 1 is a no. Great. Well, we're talking about strategy today. David says, identifying that I am tense and using tools to lower the levels is useful. In the past, I had no tools. Great, great, great. So keep developing those tools. They're very, very powerful. Dequa says, the house guest, Rumi, is a helpful reminder sometimes. Okay, we'll have to look into that. Don't know that one, but Rumi is held in high regard for things like these. Ronald says, I can be brave when I'm in a tense situation, but I feel a separation with, so I would qualify as to no relaxing. All right, so lots of strategies. I teach relaxation as part of memory in the masterclass, so if you need help with that, I would suggest you dive into that in the context of memory. At the very bottom of the master plan course in the masterclass, there are MP3s that will help you be so relaxed and just use the techniques without any sort of stress or whatnot. JV Angeles, I haven't forgotten your question about foreign language. We'll catch that at the end when I do a sweeping review of anything that I might have missed. But for now, let's carry on with the next mental strength test question. And it is this. Does failure cause you to quit, or does it inspire you, better said, to work harder? Let me know in the chat if that's the case. Because if you quit, then how can you really say you have mental strength? There are certain escape hatches, reasonable, rational times to throw in the towel, as they say. But most people quit when they really should just reassess and figure out how to either work harder or work smarter. Now, I don't really like this cliche, you got to work smarter instead of working harder. And one of the reasons that I don't like it is because sometimes you never figure out how to work smarter if you don't work harder. And you can sit there and gobble down all the books from all the smart guys who have figured out how to work smarter, not harder, and you'll never get there because we're sometimes incredibly stubborn people, or we just can't figure it out unless that we have had a bit of the pain, had a bit of the frustration. We can listen to wisdom until we're blue in the face and nothing will change. So I think the reality is if you want to work smarter, you're going to need to work harder in order to see it from the trenches, right? So they say that the map is not the territory. And this is very, very important because there's only one place the map exists, and that's in your head. You can look at all the maps of other people, but their maps are in their heads. And because the map is not the territory, you need to be in the territory. And if you sit there and watch all these videos, work smarter, not harder, you can delude yourself and never get anywhere because you're chasing this easy peasy button that they only ever figured out because their minds were open through experience because they didn't quit when things got tough, right? Because things will get tough, right? And you will have to scratch your head from time to time. Very, very important. So JV Angeles says it inspires me to work harder. Jamiron says excellent point. Let me know what your answers are to this. This can be one where it's hard to be honest, but I commend those who are. And I'll tell you, although I never quit, I was really, really tempted to give up on my PhD. And I'll never forget the dark night of the soul where I really wanted to stop. But I pressed on. And I pressed on by creating an effective model, an effective mental model that helped me push on. And it had different parts to it. The first part was the I don't want to be that guy model, because I knew a lot of people who had ABD, which means all but dissertation. And I knew people who quit and then they wound up not teaching Shakespeare, which was their dream, but serving ice cream at Baskin and Robbins. So I kept that in my mind, and I thought, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want that outcome, no matter what. And because it was so meaningless to me all of a sudden, all of this PhD stuff, I had to create a mental metaphor, a model that made sense. So I thought of Mount Everest a lot. I don't want to climb mountains. I don't care about climbing mountains. But it was that sort of thing where you started to climb the mountain and you're either going to know what it's like to be at the top or you're not. And it would be far better to just press on, see what it's like, have a look around, and then quit, whatever that would mean. How could you quit something that you accomplished? Well, whatever. But the whole idea is I decided I would prefer to see the view from the top and then walk down than to always wonder what it was like to have the view from the top. So I thought a lot about Mount Everest, and I just thought, well, we made it this far, might as well go and put my flag there, even if it is meaningless. And the reason I ever got the idea that it would be meaningless is because I got the reality talk one time from my dissertation supervisor, who painted a picture of the status quo. Oh, the job market is so bad now, and things have changed so much in academia, the bums and seats policies, yada, yada, yada. And he said, even if you had this many publications, good luck, blah, blah, blah. I remember looking at him and saying, even though I was a little bit destroyed inside from the talk, I said, well, if there's no university that'll hire me, I will create my own. Well, look at this. This is what I've done. I made good on that promise, but I wouldn't have made good on it if I quit, because in some sense, in some very true sense, I did fail. I did fail to get what I wanted, which was a tenure track job at a university. I have completely and utterly failed at that. And I still refuse to quit. And I work very hard to have this little online university of memory that we've built together as a community. So I failed, but I didn't quit. And it still is something that I have to have mental resilience and strength around, because it annoys me to no end that there's a university campus right outside my door, and they said no to my offer to help and to teach. There are so many students here who are in media, and they want to learn how to be a writer, how to make videos, how to deal with audio, and so forth. I do this day in and day out, and I've got a PhD and 2 MAs and a BA. I know how to do this stuff, but I'm not wanted. I have applied for digital media professorship just to see if I could get in, and called up the person doing the hiring. He got all excited when he heard how many YouTube subscribers that I have. And he got on my YouTube channel, and then his voice dropped all of a sudden. I don't know, long hair, crazy thumbnails, I have no idea what it is. But he said, oh, you don't even bother applying. You'll be an outlier. And I said, but you told me it says in the job description that you want somebody who not only has, degrees and qualifications and publications in this area, because I have an MA in media and communications. You don't only want that, but you want someone who's a practitioner of the craft of digital communication, digital media. They had no answer to this. I don't know what it was. Must have been the long hair, must have been the crazy thumbnails. I have no idea. But they would rather hire somebody else, and they did. And it does, to be honest, break my heart a little, because there's so many students that I know I could help, because I've got years of experience now doing websites and videos and all this sort of stuff. So it's some very real, practical way I have failed. And it bums me out, to be honest, because it should be so easy to just waltz into a 10-year track job and to mosey on my way to a nice pension or whatever you call it. But it's not happening for whatever reason. And it is a failure. It is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In the established system, it is completely and utterly a failure. But I do not quit. And I build this online university day in and day out with help from you guys, of course, with your thumbs up, which if you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, help me build this university with the thumbs up, and with all your comments, and with all the people who join the Magnetic Mary Method world in the masterclass and other things that we offer. So there you go. You can fail and still win. Anybody can. I know you can. So that's a test of your mental strength, of your resilience, is the ability to show up anyway, even if you fail. And even if, for whatever reason, despite all the qualifications you might have, people just reject you for whatever reason. I have no idea why. It makes no sense to me. But so it is. So it goes. All right, let's check in with the chat. We got more for our mental strength test, but I want to always make sure these test things make sense to you, so that's why we elaborate a little bit. Let's see, where were we? Physical says, I'd always go into analyzing mode of the situation. To work harder or to quit depends on what I decide, but generally I look for more information about the subject. That is good. That is good. More information always helps, as long as you don't get into analysis paralysis. We've spoken on our previous live stream about avoiding analysis paralysis. Dekwa says, look for a better way and the silver lining. Excellent, excellent. Yes, and you know, sometimes we want to look for the brass lining too, and the copper lining, and the gold lining. It's not always just silver lining. There's multiple gradients of value in things. So we want to value all elements that are there, because there might be dirt that's valuable. You never know unless you value everything, right? So when we think about our failure, what is the value in failure? Well, for me, it's been tremendously valuable because it's helped me be more stubborn. Oh, like I told my doctoral supervisor when he said, it's going to be hard out there. You're very unlikely to get a job. Just look at the statistics, blah, 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 blah. Well, I could have seen that as a soul-crushing thing, which it was, but I put it in its place and used mental strength to just immediately decide, if I'm not going to get a job in a university, I will build my own. And I did it. I didn't know at that time that I was going to have to build it, but, you know, I saw value in the challenge, right? And made it happen. All right. David says, I have changed my card memorization images and techniques many times this year. Keep trying to improve. Excellent, excellent. So change is important. Trey Verde says, Leanne, I don't know what that means, but thank you for that post. Ronald says, sometimes the pattern of giving up has an answer in it. I stopped music for 15 years and then caught the bug again. Excellent, excellent. Good that you're back in music. We need more music. Dekwa says, thank you for pressing on to the mountaintop. Well, thank you for being part of this journey, Dekwa. I appreciate it. Davlavi says, very inspirational. WTF, a university turned you down? Oh, more than one. More than one. JV says, thank you for sharing your story, that you were as human as we all are. That means if you can do it, anyone can do it. Attitude is really important. Yes, attitude is super important, and I believe anybody can do it. There are so many people, the only reason why they are not doing it is because they've decided they can't do it. And look, there are things in reality that will stop you, so to speak. But you don't have to be stopped by reality. You can invent, you can innovate, you can sidestep, you can make something happen. I never forget, you know, there was a guy who I was involved in the Pollination Project, which is a charity, wonderful charity. And this guy, he had no legs, but he wanted to be able to deliver food to other people. So instead of any other number of things that he could do, such as giving up, he applied for a grant from the Pollination Project. And what he applied for was a bike that he would be able to pedal with his hands in order to deliver food to other people in his community. And so he figured it out, the mechanics of it all, and he applied for the grant, and they built him the bike, and now he delivers food, pedaling around with his hands, and there's a basket on there, and he delivers the food. So a lot of people just give up, and you don't have to give up. So not having legs is not an excuse for most things that you might want to do, apparently. And one of my mentors, John Morrow, he can only move his mouth. Only moves his mouth. And yet, he has dominated the internet. He's one of the best bloggers in the world. We always call him the king of bloggers. And I've been so honored and blessed to have him as a personal mentor, where we get on calls and talk things through, etc., get tips and strategies based on the fundamentals, because he is a real teacher that makes sure that you have the fundamentals first before you can even get on a call with him. And, he is so good. He's so good. His writing gets thousands upon thousands of shares, and he writes it all with only being able to move his mouth. Totally limited to that in terms of his body. But he's got his mind, and he makes it happen. He figures out how to make it happen anyway. So he inspires me. So, attitude, it matters. Physico says, I'd rather watch Dr. Metivier with his long hair and his beard than most university teachers I have. Well, thank you for that, Physico. I appreciate that. David says, we are your students, and you have changed my life for the better. And Joseph is in the house. Good to see you, Joseph. Hello. Trey Verde says, perspectives. Excellent, excellent. Dekwa says, I've always been criticized for being too optimistic, but it hasn't stopped me yet. Well, yeah, criticism is always coming, right? And it comes from the weirdest people at the weirdest times, from the weirdest angles sometimes, doesn't it? Maricela says, Neothink and Neo-Tech help to deal with the anti-civilization. We can win all the time with the civilization using reasoning, but outside with other people who do not think in reasonable thoughts, no one can win. So we need to understand that not all people are on the same level, dimension, or the things that do not match us to be there. Probably there's a reason we cannot see because our vision is limited, but it can be better later, maybe. Yeah, I'm not actually sure I agree with that, Maricela. I'm not sure that there are levels in the real world. And so I'm not sure that there is an anti-civilization, but we'll talk about that in a second, actually. But I think that that may be a useful tool for some part of the journey, some stage of the journey, even though I don't think there are stages or levels at the end of the day. That may be a useful way to think about it, but I would suggest that there are other ways to think about it, and I will indeed think about that, share those ideas with you in a moment. But interesting. Now, we're ready for the next question in our mental strength test, which is, are you in control of your emotions, or do they control you? Now, this is a bit of a trick question, because who wouldn't want to be controlled by their emotions? What is laughter except for being out of control and controlled by your emotions, right? But you know what we mean. We don't want to be controlled by destructive emotions that cause us to break things, whether they be physical things or relationships. That would be being controlled by your emotions in a very negative way, right? But we do, at some level, want to be swept up by our emotions because that's part of being human, right? That's part of how that we enjoy this physical reality that we're in. So in your mental strength test, make sure that you consider this and consider when you maybe are too in control of your emotions, because you can't let your hair down and you can't laugh with joy, or you can't tell someone that you're very happy for them because you're so clamped down. You're so in control of your emotions. And, you know, I've been there where you couldn't express anything because you were in scarcity, or you were in slave morality, or you were in some negative state that made it very, very difficult to actually let go of control of emotions. But this is just a general mental strength test question, and think about it both ways. The next mental strength test: do you believe in yourself? Do you right now believe in yourself? Do you believe that you can make it, that you can do it? Do you have the belief that things are going to work out fine in the end? Now, you got to cross-index this with the strategy, right? Because when we say, do you believe in yourself? What is yourself? Well, this can be just a completely meaningless statement, or it can be very, very meaningful. So yourself, when we think about, do we believe in ourselves, we want to think, what is this self that we believe in. So I think that the self should be a series of strategies that you can believe in. So do you have that plan in place, right? For example, do you have discernment, etc.? So is there, another way to think of this question is there something in you that is worthy of belief? And do you do the tests that we're talking about so you can confirm and or deny your selfness, right? In a scientific way, by running experiments, by setting goals and seeing if you're able to accomplish them. Like David has shared, he's changing his card images, so that tells us that there's some sort of goal there that he wants to improve with cards. And so then there'd be a strategy. Part of that strategy is change. So obviously there's a belief that the change can be made and that there are strategies that are worth pursuing. So that's a very important thing. David says, my emotions are in balance. Excellent, excellent. In some areas, yes, others, no. You believe in yourself. Excellent. And it's good to know. It's good to know. You can do a simple exercise and write out 10 things you believe in yourself about, 10 things you're not so sure. Physical says, I'd say I'm in control of my emotions, but people around me are not and see me as an outcast for that reason. That's interesting. Well, one of the things we can always think about is why are those people in our field of vision? And you say, Physico, that you see patterns in your life as the way to see the universe that you live inside. Interesting, interesting. Davlavi says, sense of timing is key in life. Time to express, time to ask where to be, when to be, and so forth. Timing, yeah, is very, very important. Do you believe that you will be able to make the most out of timing? That's an interesting new way to frame the question. JV says, I feel most often that I'm not in control of my emotions, and I believe in myself, and yes, there is this self-worth. Excellent, excellent. Well, it's good. It's good that people believe in themselves. The next mental strength test. Do you have a strategy for handling self-doubt? Because we are all going to come into situations where we don't believe in ourselves. So what do we do? What do we do, right? When we have that doubt, do you have a strategy for handling it? JV says, I feel most, have we read that one? Dequa says, my emotions often taint reality, but becoming more aware of this happening. Right. So yeah, when we are smarter students, we've got to be able to see the reality of how our emotions can really, really color things and not necessarily give us that accurate portrayal that we need in order to really make progress. So, do you have a strategy for handling self-doubt? This is really, really important, and it's been very, very important for me. And we'll talk about self-inquiry as one of those strategies. It's very powerful and useful for handling self-doubt. So we'll talk about that later, but just in general, if you are able to give yourself a score here, this will be useful and powerful for you to see. And then if you don't have a strategy for handling self-doubt, then you might want to get one, because so many people, when they don't have a strategy for self-doubt, they end up not taking action, which is absolutely essential. So I have self-doubt all the time, and I have strategies for dealing with it. One of it's just self-inquiry. Another is community, being able to go and ask people, hey, I have some doubt about my ability to do this. What do you think? And then they might say, yeah, well, that's a reasonable doubt. Why don't you do this? Try this. And then you get the fullest possible view around you of strategies. You have more resources than you need usually, but most people don't tap into just asking questions of others. And right now, I have a major book that I want to release, and self-doubt comes up every day, and I have to have a strategy for dealing with it, because this is the biggest book project I've ever put together. And yeah, it's normal, just normal. The insular cortex of the brain guarantees you will have self-doubt, and you got to have strategies for it. So checking in with the chat. Davlavi says, is mindfulness meditation part of mental strength? Yes, and we'll get into why and how. So thank you for asking that. Ronald says, I have given up trying to be enlightened. I would rather just have a good self-inventory. Well, that's great, Ronald. James Schwartz is one of the great teachers of enlightenment, and he says, if you ever think you're enlightened, you better hang your head in shame. So how is it that one of the greatest teachers of enlightenment, who wrote Essence of Enlightenment, one of the best books ever, would say that if you think you're enlightened, you should hang your head in shame? Well, it's because enlightenment doesn't exist, right? And there's no such thing. And yet, there is something about fundamental well-being that is so unshakable that you are at the highest possible level you can achieve because of having gone through certain steps. And if you haven't gone through those steps, then you really aren't there yet. But part of being there yet is realizing how fragile fundamental well-being is and how easy it can be to lose it, right? So self-inventory, as you put it, is one of the strategies for maintaining it, keeping it. Daily self-inventory. We'll talk about this as part of our strategies, but I'm glad that you said, giving up trying to be enlightened, because enlightenment is not a thing that you achieve. It is not a thing that one has. It's something that technically, if you really think through the great spiritual traditions, it is something you always are, right? You just forget it. You forget. And how do you forget? Well, we'll talk about some of that when we get to the book recommendations that I have for you that will help you remember that if there is such a thing as enlightenment, you always already were enlightened. You just forget it. You fall into what's called ignorance. And one of the things that you want to do, and mental strength guarantees that you will do it if you develop mental strength, is you want to continually practice, because constant practice neutralizes ignorance as an acid neutralizes a base, which purifies you to be constantly focused on the now. That's more, I've changed it a little bit there, but that's a quote from a text, an ancient text in Sanskrit called the Atmabodha. And James Schwartz translated the piece that I'm half quoting from. But it's very, very important that if you're going to get anywhere, you have that constant inventory and you practice having that constant self-inventory. It's very important. So I'm glad you raised that. Physical says, testing and connecting patterns through making mental stimulations of reality are my first go-to answer. Excellent, excellent. David says, either avoidance or just doing what needs to be done without avoidance. Depends on the situation. Okay, great, great. Jamiron says, too much belief in oneself versus stagnation versus narcissism. Yeah, you don't want to have meaningless self-belief, which leads to narcissism and, basically all kinds of things, right? No, you don't want to do that. You want to carry forward. And JV says, strategy. What about handling self-doubt? I think, yes, to me, it simply is this belief that we are all a spark of God, but I wish to read those books that you would highly recommend. Great. So I'm not sure that there is a God for us to be a spark of, but we will certainly talk about suggestions that would help you test whether there are sparks or gods, because why would there be either? Why would they be necessary? Dekwa says, various strategies. Excellent, excellent. So that's good. And you want to have a variety of strategies. Next mental strength test question. Can you stay focused in complicated situations? Right? So you might need to scroll back and think about what focus means. And we've talked a little bit about defining it already. But ask yourself, can you stay focused in complicated situations? And then do some mental inventory. Do a memory test. Try and write down 10 complicated situations you were in, and did you stay focused in them? And think of the genre of complex situations. Don't just have this blanket generic idea of what a complicated situation is, but think of the different ways that situations get complicated and what your strategies are for them. Get an inventory going, and then think about what focus means and see the different kinds of focus that you might need. The next is, are you equipped with decision-making tools? So when you're faced with a decision, do you just make decisions, or do you go through a process first? So one of the decision-making tools that I've been working with a lot lately is the RAP tool, Indecisive. So I highly recommend this, and we've already mentioned it today, but the RAP tool, Indecisive, is very, very important. And it will be one of the book recommendations. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But this is very, very important. And Jamiron says, tough question with this one, especially with OCD. Yes, well, I certainly have certain OCD tendencies myself, and managed to get ahead of them using a lot of the tools that we're talking about today. But are you equipped with decision-making tools? Very, very important. Maricela says, I try to focus. For example, now my mother, my aunts, Alina and Graciela are talking loud, and I'm trying to listen to you at the same time. So that would be a sort of question. Do you have some decision-making tools that can make it possible for you to listen somewhere else where there aren't interruptions? You know, that's a simple sort of decision-making thing. Anyway, that's the mental strength test. There are many, many more questions for sure. But if you wanted to score yourself, if you were to give 10 points to each, and you can go back and watch the replay to scan through the questions again, score them 10 points each. If you get an 80, well, then you're a mental strength master already. If you got 60 to 79, let's say you're a mental strength adept, which means you're quite good. You have a certain adeptness with this. If you got 40 to 60, mental strength squire, which, you know, is kind of like a student or someone guiding yourself very well along the way to mastery. 20 to 40 is a fledgling mental strength novice. So yeah, you're on the path. And if 0 to 20, well, you've got adventurous activities ahead. So please dive in to what we're about to talk about, because I'm going to do my best to give you some strategies and a path forward. But first, before we carry on, if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going for you. And if you haven't yet joined the street team for my next book, please make sure to go to magneticmarymethod.com/VM to get hooked up with that. It is an opportunity to get some behind-the-scenes previews from the book, behind-the-scenes videos, advanced audio elements, and more that I'll be sharing for those who are on the street team. JV says he is a squire, so he really needs those recommended books. Excellent, excellent. And one of those books I would recommend is my next book, which is coming out, should be April 2020. And you can be part of the street team to get advance notice and special bonuses that will only be for the street team at magneticmarymethod.com/VM. All right. Jorge says he's in the UK, London. Excellent, excellent. I love the UK. I love London. Very, very wonderful place. Spent lots of time there and have many memory palaces in London. All right, everybody. So we're going to get into some strategies. But before we do, we're going to have a quick break. And that break is going to be entertaining for you. And here we go.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 67 No.
All right. So that's a great demonstration from Paul. I always love watching that. He's a real action taker, and he's got the mental strength to get up in front of an audience and demonstrate it. Amazing, amazing. So JV says, I will be on that advanced team to get discounts. And OMG, unbelievable. Yes, Paul's performance there is actually totally believable, totally doable for anybody who would like to do it. And I just absolutely adore when people send me their videos, and wonderful, wonderful. All right, so thank you for those of you who are joining the street team here, and for those of you who already have the masterclass or a book by me or whatever, really appreciate it. That's what enables me to run my own university here, and always a pleasure to serve through these training products. Now, we're going to get started with our mental strength strategies, and some of these are going to require you to take action as quickly as possible. So if you're not already, take some notes and, come back and watch the replay if that's what it takes. But it's going to be very, very important that you take action in order to get results. And I want to commend, again, those of you who have been active in the chat so far by taking the mental strength test. That is really, really great. And it's one of those micro steps that leads to more steps. And the more steps you take, the more steps you can take, because you're starting to transform. You're starting to change the actual neurochemicals in your brain that lead to more and more action, because we know that we need to start small. We need to have incremental change, and you can just start with simple exercises. So we need to know our values. And in order to know our values, we need to create a vision for success and then stick to it, right? So to get smarter, to be serious, mature, and ready to embrace reality, the reality is you need a vision. You need a guiding star. You need to have some practical idea of how you're going to get where you want to go, and you need to test that you actually want to go there, because so many people create destinies and destinations that they don't actually want. Their parents want it, their spouses want it, heck, an earlier version of themselves want it, and because of primacy effect in the mind, in the memory, they're caught in a prison of previous desires that are no longer true. So one of the things that we need to do is not just know our values, but evaluate our values and test them. So I got a ton of links and resources for you in the description below this live stream. And one of them is a very detailed training on how to create a memory vision statement, right? And it's very, very important to make sure that you have a vision statement. And it can be just as simple as saying, my vision for myself in the next 2 to 5 years or 2 to 3 years is to accomplish X. But there's more finesse to it. So I would highly recommend that you go through there. I share my vision statement for Magnetic Memory Method as well as for my own memory and what I'm doing in my own project, and use examples. And there was a great chat sequence going on there, so you can watch the replay and get a lot of fun out of that. But one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to just simply seek greatness. So as you're evaluating your values, seek greatness, but be careful about how you're defining greatness so that it's actually possible for you to achieve it. So for example, you want to think about your actual existing competence. What is the amount of things you've achieved already? And how can you build on an existing strength? And then how can you set the path for another level or another place to arrive at that is actually possible for you to do because you've based it on your existing strength? And this can be quite challenging, because when we think about greatness, we sometimes exaggerate and we create goals that we can't possibly achieve. But true greatness is actually achieving something because you set an achievable goal based on your existing competence. And if you don't have the existing competence to achieve a particular goal, then the number one job is to achieve that competence. So then greatness would be achieving the competence that gets you towards your goal, right? So I can make that very, very concrete for you. I have a certain amount of competence in writing books and releasing books and getting them ranking inside of Amazon's Google or algorithms, right? But what I don't have such a great competence with is getting them into bookstores, getting them into airports, for example. So in order to have this new level with my next book, I have to think differently about it. And I can't just jump into bookstores. I have to develop the competence for another kind of book skill and writing a kind of book that gets me closer to there. So if I were to think of being, there's A-list writers, B-list, C-list, D-list, I can think about being, for example, maybe I'm a D-list writer and I want to get to A, but I'm not likely going to jump from D to A. So I've got to look at C. I look at my existing competence, I look at what I've done, look at all those skills, very practical skills, etc. And then I just think about how am I going to become C. Now, it could be that by going from D to C and being willing to focus on just that jump, I do end up going higher, like, for example, to B, maybe even to A, who knows. But by being willing to focus in and just set the goal based on my existing competence and the most likely skills that I can proceed with, then I'll be able to do that. Same thing with memory. So, for example, being able to memorize volumes of text. So I set myself to memorize massive amounts of Sanskrit, but I didn't set the goal to be thousands of passages of Sanskrit. I just focused on one small piece, 32 verses, nailed it, right? But I was willing to start with that. And there is greatness in that, just having those 32 verses. Then the next one was 30 verses. Got that. Then the next one is only 6 verses, right? Now it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one, right? But it's not just say, I'm going to memorize, 118 Upanishads. No, it's just piece by piece, going from strength to strength. So that's very, very important. And you do it based on your values, because my value is actual accomplishment, not deluding myself that activity is somehow accomplishment, but actual accomplishment. And that's much greater than just, constantly taking actions that lead nowhere. So that's very, very important. Another strategy for you is that you've got to learn how to water, weed, and repeat. And you've got to do it on a cycle, because for whatever reason, the mind gets tired and the weeds grow back. So, you water the plants, you weed out the plants that you don't want there, and then you repeat. And so some of the weeds are like negative thinking or black and white thinking, which comes again and again and again. I don't know why it is, but it just happens to be that no matter how much I practice, I still sometimes get negative thoughts. So you got to just practice weeding them out. And while you're weeding, water the really good thoughts and repeat and repeat and repeat. And then you've got to identify and remove draining thoughts. So one of the things that I really worked hard on in myself was to dissolve the thoughts that drain me of energy and have tools and strategies for getting rid of them the instant that they show up. Or if I can't get rid of them the instant that they show up, that I have a strategy for working at them, chipping away at them so that they dissolve, that they disappear. And so one of the tools through self-inquiry is just to have this ongoing question that comes up. How do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? So when thoughts come up that are draining, just simply say, how are these thoughts behaving? Oh, well, they're behaving out of scarcity, or they're behaving out of irrational fear, or they're behaving out of some tiredness, or I just haven't eaten, or whatever. Then you have a strategy, right? So identify and remove draining thoughts. There's actual Sanskrit that I've memorized that helps as well. And there's something to memorizing it in Sanskrit. Very important. So have strategies for identifying and removing energy draining thoughts. You'll be amazed by how much more energy you have when you do this, when you start to get rid of them. Because so many people are being sucked dry of vitality by their monkey minds. Endlessly negative thoughts, worry thoughts. scarcity thoughts. Oh, I won't have enough, etc., etc. That is such a drag and a drain on your mental strength. In fact, you're stronger than you think. It's just that so many of your memory and mind muscles are being burned out by faulty application of your strength. So if you can get rid of that, you'll be much better off. And then you want to identify and remove comfort zone thinking. So a lot of people just stay in their comfort zone, and they have a whole bunch of strategies to keep themselves in their comfort zone. But you want to start to get at a meta level, picking away at that, removing it. That way you will have much, much more energy and focus for moving forward towards your goals, provided you have the vision statement that we talked about. So I recommend that other live stream. If you're just joining us, let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Get involved in the chat. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going for you. And we'll carry on with these strategies and some recommendations that I have for you. Another strategy, and Maricela gets at it here with her chat, very good skill, is to write and to read. Absolutely. And to track and write what you read. So tracking your progress is really, really important for developing mental strength, because instead of just remembering all the time what it is you did or you didn't do, you make a visual record that's right in front of you so that you're able to have a through line that's tangible. And one of the ways that I love to do this is with some journals. But you can just have simple journals. So a very simple journal is something like this, where I just on a daily basis keep records of what it is that happened. And just as a daily habit, it's a good memory exercise at the end of the day to recall what happened and to be reminded in a journal like this, which is called a 5-year snapshot journal. And over 5 years, you'll have a little memory reminder every day. So 5-year snapshot journal, very powerful. And when I get back to these pages next year, I can cover it up and say, oh, what do I think that happened a year ago? Do a little memory test, a little memory exercise. Whether you get it right or wrong doesn't matter. It's a great stretch, right? But it's just a simple journal. And you can do that. I highly recommend that. And I also recommend assisted tracking. So I've used a lot of assisted tracking in the form of these kinds of journals. And I highly recommend everybody here go out and get some. Treat yourself to these in 2020. So the Freedom Journal, very powerful. And if you want something a bit more robust and rigorous, the Mastery Journal. And what I've really enjoyed with the Mastery Journal is it really breaks down and has space for tracking multiple habits, multiple daily missions, and you have a little place to write out your morning routine and check off that you did it, and you can give yourself scores and whatnot, and then at the end of the week it helps you make a chart. And it's very, very important because it's a manual chart that you do with your hands. And when you get integrated that way with all your muscles, more of your brain gets involved, and it's very, very powerful. Highly recommended. But the thing that you have to understand and you have to be aware of is that the assistance can help, but it can also hinder you. So the last thing that you want is to be, oh my God, I don't have my mastery journal, and your whole life falls apart. The reality is you want to use it long enough that it becomes a habit to the point that you no longer need it. So I have done these to the point that I no longer need them, and I just sort of do it automatically without them. And that's very, very easy to explain why that happens. And it's because of procedural memory. So you develop strong habits, and your brain actually changes. So you may have heard the famous Einstein brain story where he has an omega-shaped shoehorn, or this sort of shape of the omega symbol in his brain from being so practiced at violin. And that's partly caused by procedural memory. It gets so strong And you only get that through the development of chemicals like dopamine, myelin, all kinds of norepinephrine, and other opioid receptors just firing like crazy in your brain. And it creates an actual physical memory that causes you to take action. It almost becomes like autopilot. So I've spent so much time with these, a sufficient amount of time, that it's just become autopilot and I don't need it anymore. So it's really the best investment that you can make. And I recommend that you get both a Freedom Journal and a Mastery Journal. Do a Freedom Journal first, then a Mastery Journal. And by the time that you finish one each, you'll have such skills on autopilot that you'll just be able to go forward without them anymore. It'll just become second nature. But you got to do them, and at least for 90 days. Pat is in the house listening from the Golden Triangle. Thank you for being here. And you say, verbo volant sed scripta manent. The spoken flies, but the written remains. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Thank you for sharing that. Good to see you, Pat. Happy New Year to you. Happy holidays. And if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. So tracking progress is really, really important. It's a huge strategy for mental strength. And as Pat says, part of it is that the written remains. So I still journal. I don't necessarily journal in these, but you're able to see this track record and you never wonder, like, where did my time go? What happened? You have this wonderful physical externalized record. And you can also mind map your days. You can do all kinds of wonderful things. But the point is to make it physical, to make it external. Now, the next strategy is to embrace mistakes. And this is where a lot of people get hung up because, I don't want to make mistakes, right? Well, you do. You want to make mistakes. You want to make as many mistakes as you possibly can. Because if you don't, then you're not going to learn, right? So we had that little battle earlier against the cliche that, you got to work smarter, not harder. Well, the reality is most of us won't learn how to work smarter if we don't make mistakes as we work too hard, right? So embrace mistakes. And one of the things that you can do is mine your memory for mistakes to learn from. So a regular great memory exercise is just to reflect on the errors that you felt that you made, why you think they're errors, and so on. And then think about the lessons that you could learn from them. And this is also a really good way to gradually explore discomfort, because so many of us don't want to be uncomfortable, and yet that's where all the growth occurs. That's where we make progress. That's where we stretch, is when we are outside of our comfort zone. So you have a little outside your comfort zone machine right here, which is visiting these memories that make you cringe a little bit. But you want to do it in a safe way. And, if you have any mental health issues, make sure you see a doctor about that first. And as always, have a strategy. So we talked about on a live stream that was quite popular, and you can check out the replay below, about memory palaces as a tool versus depression. Tim Dalglish has done tons of research on this and has shown that if you have a memory palace filled with positive memories, you can get great peace from dissolving them, right? So if you have good memories on hand, you can neutralize bad ones. You can also neutralize the bad situations in everyday life when you're stressed. So he's got PTSD research and so forth. So if you're going to deal with life, which I hope you will, you're going to want to have strategies. You're going to want to be able to have resilience for embracing mistakes and having good memories in a memory palace ready to go, so that when your mood dips or you get frustrated, you can just think of all these wonderful memories and dissolve or neutralize the bad situations in life. And likewise, when you're learning from your mistakes, instead of getting all in pain, you can just go, there's some pain. I will neutralize this pain with some good memories from your memory palaces that you've set up. So we created a bunch of memory palaces together on this live stream and had some good memories that people shared, and you can learn how to do that on that replay, and the link for that is below. Cosby is here from Italy. You've just discovered the channel. Well, thank you for being here from Italy. Wonderful, wonderful to have you. And let us know how things are going for you in your memory and what mental strength strategies you love and enjoy and which ones you think you need. Thank you for being here. If you're just here now, hit the thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel if you aren't already subscribed for future memory improvement live streams and topics like this one. Really appreciate having you all as part of our community, and wonderful, wonderful to have you here. You say you've watched the last recorded lives and awesome content. Well, thank you for checking them out. Glad. And we are looking forward to a wonderful 2020 with many more topics coming, and really appreciate that everybody was so active on the channel in 2019 with your comments and sharing around. It was a very active year and a lot of growth was had. Thank you for that. All right. So the next strategy is to embrace discomfort, and embracing discomfort is really, really important. So one of the techniques that I've absolutely loved for embracing discomfort was taking cold showers. And it's kind of like a weird one, but creating cold shower or taking cold showers really helps build mental strength, because it is this strange discomfort that feels so difficult, right? And I found that taking a cold shower every day helped break down a lot of habits I had around discomfort, because getting into a cold shower requires something really, really powerful, which is developing your mental toughness. You got to really herd your naked body into ice cold water. And this is like a transferable skill that gets your clothed body to get things done and just to get it over with, right? Because you're so good at embracing the discomfort. And one of the things you learn when you do a lot of cold showers is that the pain of the cold shower is an illusion that's created in your mind. I mean, think about it. Even in Berlin, where I first started doing this, the temperature of the coldest day, the water, was probably no more than 14 to 15 degrees. It feels cold. It feels so much colder than it really is. And no matter how many times you expose yourself to the cold, it never feels any warmer. You never get used to it. But when you take cold showers, you start to really, really get acquainted with your resistance. And then you develop strategies for getting over your resistance. And like I was suggesting to you in taking, just the action of participating in the chat, it's a mini step. It's a mini accomplishment. And it's really, really good for you to make these micro steps towards different goals. So if, for example, you have a lot of work to do in a given day and you start by making this micro step of the cold shower, you have much more resilience for all the other steps throughout that day. The other thing I like about cold showers is it helps clear your thinking, right? It sharpens the edges. You feel more alert, capable, and this may be because of vagus nerve stimulation. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of science around that. And it's really just a wonderful way to build some mental resilience, some mental toughness, because you shouldn't have any problems with getting into a cold shower. So I highly recommend that. But there are other ways to embrace discomfort. So, if you don't like giving talks, go and arrange to give yourself a talk. Give a talk somewhere. And, I am again doing this TED Talk, and I have to embrace the discomfort of doing that because, you got to spend all this time in preparation, and then you got to go and stand in front of people and so forth. And you got to embrace it and do it. It's powerful. Now, another mental strength strategy is to deliberately build character. Build character. Very, very important. So how do you build character? Well, you can engage in sports and fitness. Go to the gym. Commit to going to the gym for a year, showing up 3 times a week. Do whatever splits that you want, or join a sport. It can be table tennis, or it can be billiards, or whatever it is. But you'll build character by becoming more involved in sport or fitness. You can also build character by travel and engaging in certain cross-cultural experiences. So, get yourself invited to a dinner with another culture, or go to a different country that you've never been to before. It will build character, and it will give you more mental strength strategies because you have a wider field of reference in the world. You can also volunteer. So volunteering is very, very powerful for building your character, and it's something that not enough people do. I mentioned the pollination project earlier, and that was something where I not only was a donor, but I also volunteered my time to vet certain applications, and that's tremendously fulfilling. And it builds character as you engage with other people. You could start a business to build character. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You could just start a simple business where you take care of yards in your neighborhood, or, anything. Just learn to start a business. Another great way to build character is to tackle a topic you dislike. So, there's a lot of people who are on the right who could really build a lot of character by learning more about the left. There are a lot of people who are on the left who could build a ton of character by learning more about the right, for example. And then, if you really want to build more character, learn about the center, right? And really understand the political spectrum and get out of your comfort zone. Actually read both sides of the aisle. Another way to build character is to teach others. The more you teach, the more you learn what you already know. You learn it more. And you also build character because you see how others perceive information. You see how the display of information affects others. You learn to pivot. You learn how to do things differently in real time. Very powerful way of building character. And this will give you meta-level skills that give you more strategies than we could possibly talk about today as part of your abilities to have mental strength. Now, another thing that you can do in terms of building mental strength is craft your moral compass. So you want to think about, what are your morals? And really write them down, dig into them, and do reading around this. So I highly recommend that you read something like Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. There are many, many texts to read about ethics, but craft your moral compass. I think of this one in particular because it has a wonderful chapter on friendship, and I think that all of us could stand to be better friends to other people. And there's great material about friendship to memorize in this book. So I highly recommend this as a mental strength strategy, particularly friendship, because, often people talk about how that they have people around them. Physico today mentioned people around him as something that anchors him in a particular way. Maricela often mentions other people. And often the reason why we don't behave correctly around other people is because we never have thought about it in terms of our moral compass, and we don't have strategies for dealing with other people. And, Sartre has that famous line that hell is other people. And certainly if you're lacking a moral compass, they will be. But if you have a proper moral compass, then you have strategies for dealing with that. And that's part of having mental strength, is having a moral compass. Another thing you can do is practice gratitude. And gratitude is something that you can easily do inside of your daily journaling. And I make that part of my journaling because it's very, very important. You want to do it daily. There's a lot of science about why that it's good from a neurochemical perspective. So you want to check that out if you need science to convince you. 59 Seconds by Richard Weissman is a great book on that. But you want to do it in writing. Actively get it out. You could do it in writing. You could do it in mind mapping. Every day, be grateful for others and be grateful for what you have. Be grateful that you are you. It's really, really important. But don't just do it in writing. Do it in person. Tell other people that you're grateful for them in your life. Very, very important. And teach your children to do that as well, because they'll need other people to see that they are people of gratitude in order to operate at the highest possible level. So the 100% dude who is 200% cool. I love that screen name. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for saying, you say you are grateful for this video. Well, I'm grateful for your chat. The 100% dude who is 200% cool. I love that. What a great screen name. Thank you. I am grateful for your being here today and your chat. Not sure why it's not showing up on our screen there yet, but hopefully soon. All right. Now, the next strategy I would suggest is that you continually remind yourself of your strategy, right? You want to continually remind yourself of your strategy, but you also want to continually remind yourself of responsibility. So no one else is responsible for your results in life except for you. You've always got to look in the mirror. When things go wrong, look in the mirror. When things go right, look in the mirror, right? And now it's always going to be that other people are involved, but you have to remind yourself that you have responsibility. Having a vision statement is a huge part of reminding yourself that you are responsible for it. So revisit your vision statement. And if you don't know how to make a vision statement, watch that replay that I've linked you to in the description. You also want to have a treasure map. We've talked about treasure maps, and you can check that out in that vision statement replay. And I share one of mine. It's been super powerful. Never would have believed that stuff works, but it really, really does. All right. Now, here's another mental strength strategy. Get off of the algorithms and complete full courses. So many people have told me that they're like, I never take your course on your site because I can't imagine that there's anything there that isn't on the free channel. This is so far from the case. You need curation. You need courses that are designed and built from beginning to end, and you need to complete them from beginning to end. So many people are just next suggested video, suggested video, suggested video, scan, suggested video. They're just being chewed up by the machine to be shown ads all the time. But you've got to complete full courses. Believe me, I would love to just sit there and watch whatever recommended videos all day long because it's pleasing. It's the dopamine spike, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing it from time to time. And I'll share a resource with you later, a very good resource that gets into how to integrate this into your life more so that you can have the best of both worlds. But what you want to do is you want to complete courses in full. So I have a training for you at the bottom of this that will help you speed learn courses, not just memory courses, but complete full courses. I use this strategy myself, and I take full courses, and it can be tough because some of these courses are really, really big, but I have strategies for it, and I share those with you. So one of the mental strength strategies is to be a person who is thorough and completes courses in full from beginning to end. When there are exercises, you complete those exercises from beginning to end. And the courses that I take almost always have exercises that need to be completed, and diligently show up and complete them. It's huge for your progress. Very, very important. So Ronald Rash says, I'm not sure why the chats aren't appearing on the screen anymore. Sorry about that, but let me pop this on and see if I can get it to show up here so we can all see Ronald's chat, even if you're on Facebook. Let's see if I can get it to show up here on the screen. There it is. Oh, now Ronald's is showing up. Okay, now mine's showing up a million times. Ronald says, I watched the movie Capote and he had a 94% memory retention, yet he died an alcoholic. He was quite a resilient person, and yet his own demons overwhelmed him. Yeah, I'd like to know what that means, 94% retention. Interesting. Maricela says, I need this video. Complete that course. Please, it's in the description below. Watch that video, and you can see a written version on the blog as well. Anyway, it's a huge strategy, and a lot of people are not doing it anymore. They've started just grazing, and they're just in hunter-gatherer syndrome. Here, there, the other place, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They're never watching anything in full, and this is not good. You need to complete things. You need to be thorough. And yes, there are speed reading techniques, and I do teach something like speed reading in the masterclass. But I also teach you thoroughness, because anything that is speed reading has a place. It has a context. And those tools are not a replacement for thoroughness. So you have access to this. Please go through it. Another strategy is to regulate your emotions. So we've talked about this a little bit. And there's the mental way to do it, which is the spirit of experimentation that we talked about, being a real scientist who doesn't get emotionally involved in the outcomes of things, but rather you become analytic of them. But there are other things about regulating your emotions that a lot of people don't consider. So a mental strength strategy is to make sure your diet is proper and go deep, go granular into diet. I'll be talking more about going granular into diet in 2020. It's very, very important. But a huge part of emotional problems that people have is because they have toxins in their diet. And only you can teach yourself how to weed them out through processes that I'll be teaching later in 2020. But it's very, very powerful and important to do those strategies. Sleep and meditation, very, very important for helping you regulate your emotions. And then self-inquiry. that I've been talking about. And self-inquiry is something like, how do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? And then it's a little bit of a strange question to ask, but you can also just say, when thoughts come to mind or emotions happen to you, to whom is this emotion happening? And that seems very weird, right? It seemed weird to me. But when you do it, you begin to realize that there's a difference between the physical body and your awareness of what's happening to the physical body. And the more that you cultivate this awareness of the difference, the more mental strength you have to discern that, oh, this is my physical body that's freaking out here. These emotions are in my physical body, and I am not these things because they're happening in the moment. It's very powerful, but you got to just ask the question, to whom is this happening? And find that person. You won't be able to find that person. Sam Harris talks a lot about this in the Waking Up course and the book Waking Up. And he mentions the Douglas Harding book on having no head, which is very powerful to learn self-inquiry. Karagami is in the house. You ask, can mental strength increase by taking things lightly? Whenever we commit to being mentally strong, it often evokes anxiety, fear, and frustration. By taking things easily and calmly, I see success. Also, hello. Well, hello, Karagami. Yes, well, we talked about this today, so you might want to watch the replay. There are ways that you can overdo things and cause exactly the problems that you're trying to escape. And this is the sort of Bruce Lee, be water, my friend, strategy, right? Where, or, you want to be like the grass that can bend. So wind can destroy brick walls. We know this, right? Wind can take the tree and cause the tree to crash into the brick wall. But if you're grass and you just bend, well, maybe that tree will land on you for a while, but when you push the tree away, the grass will spring up, right? Or the wind will blow the grass very, very hard, but this grass will spring up. And of course, the grass is so resilient that as the wind is blowing, it's actually carrying its seeds to the next field so it can continue to grow. So, be water, my friend, be flexible, and you'll definitely be much better off. So mental strength is basically being flexible, right? And self-inquiry will help you do that. If you've taken care of your diet, you'll be much more flexible because you'll be more relaxed because your body is not fighting toxins. You're not wasting strength on things that are unhealthy for you that you are struggling with. So it's very, very important. All right, everybody. I promised I would have some recommended strength books for resilience and your mind. And the first one that I would like to share, I've shared a lot already, which is Decisive. Now, I have the blue cover. I'm not sure it makes a difference, but I wish I had the green cover. But I like this blue one, and maybe one day I will have the green cover. I highly recommend this book because it gives you tools for mental resilience by giving you a simple formula for making better decisions, and they truly are better. I've been benefiting a great deal from reading that book and using the RAP technique, which we mentioned already. So, Kirigami says, like Spike from Cowboy Bebop. Got it. Thank you. Well, thank you, Kirigami. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. And if you have any book recommendations you would like to share, that would be great. Pop them in. Now, I haven't had a physical copy of this because I had the audiobook, but You Are Not So Smart by David McRaney, one of my favorites. And why is this good for developing mental strength? It's because it gives you a lot of cognitive biases, helps you think through why we come to the false conclusions that we come to and why our brain forces us to. So we're not weird, we're not strange, but we often waste energy because we think in particular ways that just simply do not reflect the way reality really is. So one example is that, we often think that people are judging us, they're monitoring us, when the reality is that they've forgotten what we've done within milliseconds. So we're sitting there wasting mental energy, worrying about what others think about us when they're not thinking about us at all. And they haven't thought about us for longer than a millisecond. This is very freeing when you have these as your mental tools so that when you're worried about so-and-so and how they think about you, that you know that it's very, very mathematically unlikely that they're thinking about it at all. You're free. You're free. And this book is full of these tips and strategies. So make sure you read You Are Not So Smart. And very, very powerful. It's all about escaping self-delusion and developing mental tools that free you from it, because it robs you of energy. And you can't have mental strength if you are filled with so much worry and anxiety and stress. Your energy is being sapped at the mental level. All right, so get this book, please. I also recommend Happiness Beyond Thought. Why? Because it'll teach you self-inquiry. It will teach you tools of separating your monkey mind from your physical body and showing you more where in space your mind actually takes place. And you can dissolve thought so that you have something that is really, truly happiness beyond thought. I totally agree with that, that way of framing it, because I made it my project to memorize everything that Gary says to memorize. And it truly did lead to a place of having no thoughts, which is exquisite. Highly recommend it. Never thought it was possible, but I made it happen. The follow-up would be Evolving Beyond Thought. This is very, very powerful. Highly recommend this. And I recommend his YouTube channel as well as a supplement. Now, another mental strength strategy book I recommend is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And you might be thinking, why this? Well, you need to be in the now, and you need tools and strategies for being in the now. So I recommend you go through this every year, once a year, so you don't forget. And there's only one criticism I've ever had of this book, and it's not even worth mentioning. Other than that, this is gold, pure gold. So make sure you read this and read it frequently. The next book that I would recommend to you, this is going to be a challenge for a lot of people, but challenge is good. We need to be challenged so that we can grow. It's The Direct Path by Greg Good, a user guide. This is filled with exercises that will really stretch your brain and give you strategies for dealing with stress in life, because you'll be able to frame them and recognize the problems that occur. So I would read the Gary Weber stuff first and then dive into this, but you might want to just dive into this. I don't know. Carpe diem and caveat emptor. The next book I would recommend is the wonderful Mind Map Mastery by Tony Buzan. Pay attention to each and every law of mind mapping that he talks about. This is a very, very, very good book. It's no nonsense. Absolutely changed everything for me as I learned mind mapping from Tony Buzan directly. Shortly thereafter, this book came out so I could fortify all of his suggestions. There are a lot of colorful example memory palaces in it. It's an absolutely beautiful book. I'm so sad that we lost Tony Buzan, but I'm doing all I can to help promote his stuff, even after the fact. And he touched me very deeply, as you can imagine, and you probably heard the story about this, especially if you've read Moonwalking with Einstein. All right, another book, and this is still my favorite book from 2018 and from 2019, which is Rest by Alex Peng. And this is so good for developing mental strength strategies. Very counterintuitive, most of them, but one of the main ones that I like is walking as a daily strategy without any apps, just walking. Nothing to listen to or whatever. Now, sometimes I will walk and listen to audiobooks and whatnot, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is very, very powerful to just have diffuse thinking, switch off. Don't try to think about anything. You're just walking, just a walk, and you'll be amazed by the problems you solve, by the aha moments that you have, and it's really, really powerful. And there's other ideas too that I found really powerful here, such as allowing yourself to use your skills in a different context as a form of rest. So, for example, I write a lot of nonfiction, but spending time writing fiction is rest because you're still using your skills, but you're using it in a different context. I find that very powerful. My next recommendation for you is The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. This is a really powerful book, and I recommend it because it gives you some tools for developing mental resilience and strength strategies in terms of continuing to show up, not getting caught up in the outcomes, and really understanding the larger game, the game inside of the game, inside of the game, and so forth, and to treat it as an art, to truly treat it as an art. Chrome Woman Walking is in the house with a super chat. Thank you so much for that. Really, really appreciate it. And yes, I think you're going to enjoy the replay. We have covered a lot today, and I always appreciate your support so much. Thank you very much for saying hello. And yes, I think you will enjoy the replay. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it, and I hope that you will follow up with the mental strength test that we went through in the discussion below the video. As those of you who are joining us, if you missed it, we did a mental strength test. You're very welcome to go through it in the replay, and I'd love to hear your answers in the chat below. And maybe what we can do is alter the description a bit and put in what that mental strength test was, so you can just see it at a glance and complete it after the fact. Christopher says, I got Mind Map Mastery after your recommendation. Thanks. Well, thank you for getting it, Christopher. Wonderful, wonderful. And I hope that you really enjoy and put it to great use. And I'd love to see some of your mind maps at some time. If you have any to share, that would be wonderful. All right, so my next suggestion for you is Indistractable by Nir Eyal. This was my favorite podcast of 2019. He really gave a masterclass, and I hope that you'll get his book and listen to that episode on the podcast, because, wow, I was amazed how much he was able to share in such a short period of time, and how much of the knowledge in this book that he gave. But this is an absolutely incredible read, and I want you to consider getting the print version. It has the amazing ability to disappear on my green screen for some reason, but it also in the back includes a physical device that enables you to be indistractable. And it also has great strategies for being able to have some of the digital stuff without giving it up necessarily irrationally. So it encouraged me, strangely, to install Instagram on my stupid phone, my smartphone. And because I always rejected this. I don't want to be involved in there, etc., etc. But it gave me ideas for how to actually integrate it into my existence without being distracted by it. And anybody who's followed the Magnetic Mary Method project for any amount of time knows that even though I am very, very concerned about digital amnesia, I digital fast, I really limit my my exposure to the internet as much as possible. And, you know, I have a friend visiting here, and he's just amazed by how I'm going all over the place with no internet. And, you know, I'm amazed by how one travels so far around the world to stare into screens together. But, you know, he's sort of aware of that issue as well. And it's a lifestyle choice. But at the same time, there's some cool things I've found about Instagram, believe it or not. And by having rules around it, as Nir suggests, once a day, man, you can get a ton out of that, even just in 5 minutes. And there's cool things to follow. You know, for example, in the Chinese learning community, there's a lot of fun there to be had, but really in small doses and just once a day. So that's an operational principle, and been able to enjoy something and to build a bit of a community there without negative consequences at all. So that's great. And this book can help you with all kinds of the distractions in life in a very reasonable way. So please consider reading that book and listening to the interview. Now, A Question of Memory is probably my favorite memory book of all time. It's kind of hard to get hold of, but it's worth the effort. I believe Vanishing Magic has had an edition. It might be out of print already, but you could look there, look on eBay, etc. But there's reasons why I think that this is one of the best memory books, and it's because it's all about turning memory into a mental strength. And it's a very practical and reasonable approach that it makes. And I just would recommend that you understand the value of definitions and how that he defines memory as not a unitary mechanism, but a behavior. And then what is that behavior? How are you going to execute it? And what should be your science around it, really. And so it's a very, very powerful book that I recommend for mental strength strategies and some cool exercises that can help you learn the memory techniques from a master, a real acknowledged master of memory who used them in some very, very difficult situations, which is the realm of performing mentalism and magic. So very, very cool. And you may, if you know magic, know the Burglass effect, which is fun, fun, fun indeed. All right. So ultimately what we need to do is we need to perform some mental toughness workouts. If we really, really, really want to have our mental strength grow and we want to have strategies that grow with us over time, we're going to need to perform workouts. And one of those workouts is to continually develop vision statements for control over our life purpose and to grow our self-esteem. Because what thing could be more self-esteem growing than being a person who has a vision for your life that you revisit? You can instantly boost your self-esteem just by having a vision. And then you look at other people and say, hey, you seem kind of down. And they'll say, yeah, I'm down. And say, well, don't you have a vision for your life? Well, no. Well, then maybe you can inspire them to get a vision. And then your self-esteem grows as well because you share the importance of having a vision. And you share your vision and you share the things that you're doing around it. And then you grow others as you grow yourself. Very, very important. So that's a workout. The link to the video on that is in the description below. Feel free to check it out and follow along. Do the exercises so that you have a vision statement. Then you want to meditate. Do things like take cold showers. These will give you more commitment and help you with crushing simple daily goals. So like I said about cold showers, it's like this little micro action that shows you how your mind stops you from doing a very simple thing that is non-threatening in every way. And yet it feels super threatening. And the more you dive into it, the more that you'll realize that your mind is your worst enemy. And it is an obstacle that you can develop resilient tools against or to push through. So meditation, we've talked a lot about in other live streams and other videos, so we'll just sort of gloss over that. But I would recommend meditating with some of the tools in the books that I recommended, like Happiness Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought. And then I would recommend fitness for percolation and diffuse thinking every day. Go for walks every day. Go to the gym 3 times a week. Go there and just allow your mind to just run, and you'll be amazed by how your thoughts just sort of dispel and all that tension of thinking just breaks apart, and then these beautiful new ideas emerge. Very, very important. And then the ultimate mental toughness workout is memory training. So train for challenge, and that will help make you more driven. It'll make you more adaptable when you can just remember things in real time. And it'll make you more capable of remembering your commitments so that you do show up consistently over time. And you show up to build your mental strength over time. And you maintain the mental strength that you build so you don't lose it. Because everything in the brain is like a garden. And the more that you water that garden, the more robust it is. And you've got to be committed to it. But you've got to remember. And why remember in a way that is hard work when you can make it so simple to yourself with all of the techniques we talked about today with journaling and remembering to journal by having different strategies for journaling, like the snapshot journal that I talked about today, just always in your review as something that you're going to revisit year after year after year. It helps grow these skills. How I talked about using the Freedom Journal and the Mastery Journal to make it like an autopilot thing because you've been consistent with it. It's very, very simple. Very, very powerful. All right, everybody. So I'd like to remind you to get signed up for the street team for my next book, which will help you further with all of these tactics and strategies that we've been talking about today. And you can get that very simply at magneticmarymethod.com/VM. And I will share that link for you in the chat as soon as I can find it here in my wall of text here. Maybe I'll just type it. And I appreciate everybody who has signed up for the street team already, because that is very useful. The book should be out in April 2020. I'm going to be in the audiobook studio at the end of January and the beginning of February. It's going to take a long time to record it, but I hope you enjoy listening to it, because I'll record it for myself, and I'll have some behind-the-scenes videos for those of you who are on the street team at magneticmarymethod.com/VM. Dekwa asks, do you ever treat yourself to a hot shower? Yeah, but not that often. I don't find it that much of a treat. But yeah, I do both. And, some people argue that the vagus nerve is stimulated just as much from hot showers as cold showers. And that may be true, but I don't think it gives you the same mental resilience strategy skill that a cold shower does. But great question, and something to look into. Also, for those of you who are in Melbourne, feel free to grab a ticket and come see me presenting at TEDxDocklands. The link for that is down in the description below. I'd love to see you there. If you're there, please say hello. Please don't be shy. And I'm almost certainly doing an event for Magnetic Mary Method people either before or after. So please be part of that if you can. There's a lot of great speakers. Please check them all out, and I'll look forward to seeing you there if you're able to attend. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed another power session talking about the Magnetic Mary Method and related topics that can help you really get ahead in life. This will be the last live stream for 2019, and then 2020 shall commence. When 2020 arrives, I'm going to go on a little trip here and chill out a little bit. Been chilling out mostly during the holidays, but I got new podcasts for you. We're doing something on cognitive mapping soon, crystal intelligence soon, and fluid intelligence soon, and all kinds of things. Also, we're going to be updating a lot of older content on the site. So if you're not on the mailing list, you're going to miss it, because when I redo certain podcast episodes, they're not going to go out to your podcast feed. They're just going to be replaced. So what you want to do is, if you want the old episodes, make sure that you've downloaded all of the podcasts as MP3s, which you can do directly from the site. And if you want to be notified of the updates, then make sure you're on my email list, which you can start with the free course or by being on the street team list. But you won't be notified. You won't even know that it's there, because of the way that the podcast subscriptions work, which is a bit annoying, but that's just the way that it is. And so one of the first ones we'll be redoing is how to memorize a textbook. And I don't want you to miss that episode. So that's fair warning if you miss it, if you're not subscribed. But please do get subscribed. And I will look forward to seeing you all soon. But I'm just remembering that we had a question that I needed to answer that we haven't gone into yet about language learning. So I want to make sure that I answer that. And that was from JV Angelis, if memory serves. Not sure if you're still here, JV, but you said, I wish to learn more than one foreign language. Is this possible at 68 years old? Yes. Good thing I remembered that, JV. Hopefully you're able to check that answer out. If not, you can watch it on the replay. If not, I think the answer is very good, because yes, you can learn a language at 68 years old. I'll never forget, and this was an amazing, amazing experience. One of my first students that I ever had was 88, and he was able to really do well with German at 88 years old. And I'm not sure if he went on to do any more languages, but he memorized dozens of poems also, and he really loved that experience. So I'm sure that you can memorize more than one foreign language. The trick, JV, is that you want to just focus on getting one down to a certain level before skipping off to another one. And this happens. I mean, I myself have allowed Sanskrit to take over some of the steam that I had going with Chinese at the detriment of my Chinese progress. But then I leapfrogged back into Chinese, went and finished level 3 at the Confucius Institute. I'll probably go and do level 4 next year or something, because I really, really think that it's important to to continue learning Chinese. But I did, quote unquote, make the mistake of, getting shiny new object syndrome with Sanskrit. And because I had a goal with Sanskrit, I had to spend a certain amount of time splitting my attention between Chinese and Sanskrit, which is not a great strategy, but it's what I chose. And I'm glad for it, because I had at least established enough with Chinese that a foundation was laid, and that's important, so that when I did go to take a class, I was amazed that I passed the test, the intake test, to the point that they entered me at level 3. And I was like, are you sure? And they said, oh, yeah. If you have any problems, just go back to level 2. The whole time he was like, you should really be in level 4. But I said, no, I just want to stick with level 3. And then I passed level 3, and I only made one mistake on the final. And dumb mistake, but it was also, they had the classes at 6 p.m. and I'm never at my best at 6 p.m. because I get up at 3 a.m. most mornings. So by the time 6 p.m. rolls around, I think I can be forgiven if I make one mistake. But maybe not. Maybe you won't forgive me. I forgive me, though, and that's all that matters. Very, very important. But anyway, I totally plan when I'm 68 to keep language learning going, and I see no reason why that any individual couldn't continue to learn as many languages as you want, but you just got to be practical about it and, allow yourself to focus on one language at a time to a sufficient level before you go muddying the waters with 1,001 different goals. So think about that. And, if you've got the Magnetic Mary Method vocabulary builder, just don't allow yourself to be tempted with another language until that you've finished the vocabulary builder, which means a word and a phrase for each entry on that builder. And then you should be good to go. All right. So Ronald says that he has signed up and subscribed. Well, thank you for that, Ronald. Excellent. Really appreciate that. And Dequa says, thank you, Dr. Metivier, and Happy New Year, everyone. Well, thank you, Dequa. Thank you to everybody who is active today. I really appreciate that. And for those of you watching the replay who get involved in the discussion below, I thank you as well. And until we have a chance to speak again, that's it for 2019 in our live stream series. Thanks to everybody who was so active and so involved and so much fun to hang around. I absolutely appreciate each and every one of you. We've been so blessed with so much interaction and growth, and I look forward to being with you again in the future. And the 100% dude who is 200% cool says, what is it called? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what it refers to. What is what called? Please be more specific as we tidy up here. Oh, message retracted somehow from my chat, so I guess that is no longer needed to answer. But whatever it is called, I'm sure it is fantastic. And if you just head over to magneticmarymethod.com, you will be able to sign up for all kinds of things. Happiness, love, health, prosperity, says Maricela. Productive friendship in 2020. To Anthony, thank you for acknowledging April. She's a huge part of what makes this all run in the background, taking good care of me, as do you all. Thank you. And I wish you all a very, very good entrance into 2020. Come visit me at magneticmarymethod.com. And until we speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
Let the games begin! I define, establish, exercise, and practice. Externalize spatial maps as I attack the path of mature learner. Bottle burner, max memory reserve, and earnest. I'm a furnace, an anomaly, sibling of Simonides known to reduce cognitive load. And oh, how I rotate, juggling space, making a case for brain games so digital amnesia leaves you. Digital dementia is censured. Did y'all tag Herenium on your mind wall? Review, recall, we will evolve. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. This is not a game you can afford to lose.
Why?
Brain games, don't need an app for that. I just attack with the path of a lab rat. I mean scientist, I'm an annihilist, finalist, illuminist, numinous, doing this, proving this, who is this scholar? Dopamine fiend, clean sheen like the Pleiades, enemies, illities, killing with abilities, strolling with affinity, rolling with McKinney. Brain games, healthy snacks, build a palace, pick some facts, learn to balance while you rap, unleash talents, don't look back. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain game. Info encoded, mental high roller.